What is an adventure is this really interesting question because it can mean a lot of things, especially in a medieval context. If you're someone who is going to go up and get in a boat and go to Iceland, you're an adventurer. But it can also be people who are like soldiers of fortune, who's kind of willing to get out on the battlefield to do all sorts of different things. That counts as well. They're looking for excitement. And the medieval world is absolutely full of excitement. We like to talk about, for example, the Age of Discovery, which is not medieval, but finding the new world, which is news to everyone who lived in the new world at the time. But there is something there about this kind of drive to go and see new things. I think one of the first people that really comes to mind when I think about medieval adventurers is El Cid. He's born Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, and he's from Burgos, which is in the northern part of what is now Spain. And he is born into a family of lower nobility. Fairly well connected, he grows up around the courts. He is a really good battle tactician, and one thing that you could find rather a lot of on the Iberian Peninsula is battles. But on the Iberian Peninsula, you also have this added bonus, which is some people are Christians and some people are Muslims. And this gives you a really good excuse, we'll just say excuse, to go and attack the neighbors next door anytime you want to, right? So he attacks Granada, consummate Muslim kingdom, incredibly wealthy, wonderful place to attack. But Granada were technically the vassals of his lord, and he didn't bother to check. This does not go down well at court, and El Cid is banished in 1081. But because he is such a consummate and in-demand warrior, there are plenty of people who are really willing to take him on. So the next thing you know, he is suddenly attached to the court in Zaragoza, and suddenly El Cid is now working for the Muslim courts. And this is where he gets the name El Cid al-Said, which means lord or master, so he's the master of the battlefield. But what makes him an adventurer here, right? That I would argue is what he does next, which is he just says, feel like taking over Valencia. It's an incredibly wealthy place, and this is, I cannot stress enough, just the son of some lower noble, and now he controls the entire city and the surrounds. It's absolutely bonkers. And so he holds this for the rest of his life. Not a particularly long time, but it is, 5 years or so when he and his wife, Jimena, are really ruling there. But it's still kind of seen as though he is this consummate Christian Iberian, which is interesting because it tells us a lot about how Iberians think about themselves. You can work for Muslims, you can move around in these various ways, and everyone will still be like, yeah, he's a good Christian guy, a really nice guy. It's interesting to think about how one becomes a great adventurer like this. And part of what is going on for El Cid is that he understands that you have to get on the right side of people. He's also incredibly intelligent. So this is why we see him looking at Greek and Roman manuals. This is him really saying that there are things that we can learn from the past that we can apply today. El Cid probably has one of the strongest legacies of almost anyone in the medieval period, and he's certainly one of the people who, from a non-Spanish background, we will still have heard of him. There are great songs that are written about him. There's poetry. He's seen as an inspiration, as what the ultimate kind of battlefield leader could be. Obviously, Europeans are adventurers, but there are really cool people elsewhere. And a great case in point here is Hasan-i Sabbah, who is a contemporary of El Cid's. He's born in Persia. By the time he's 17, he converts to Islamism. And he really starts making his way up through the ranks almost immediately because my man is so focused. So as a result of that, it's like, great, he's gonna get sent down to Cairo because you're supposed to be hooking up with the Fatimid dynasty in order to make your way in the world. But for some reason, he does that via Azerbaijan. He's like, I'm here to convert people. And eventually he makes his way down through Damascus, and eventually he does end up in Cairo. Everybody's thinking, oh, this kid's going places, this is great. But then the Sultan dies. His son, Nazar, was going to take the throne after him, but there's a battle, Nazar is killed. This means that our boy ends up in jail because he is just on the wrong side of this. There's this one legend that he's thrown in jail and then the minaret on the side of the building collapses completely and everyone says, oh, it's a sign from Allah, he must be released and told to go get the hell out of Egypt kind of a thing. And so one way or another we know he's put on a boat. The boat sinks. He is caught and found and he is taken to Damascus in order to kind of recover his strength. And during this time he makes his own form of Islam, which is Nazari Ismaili, which becomes the largest contingent of Ismailis at the time. So between the 10th and 12th century, these are the guys, like they are really moving. So in the late 1080s, he comes across this castle, Alamut, one of these really legendary places. He just kind of camps out in the valley, and eventually he's converted enough people from the local area that everyone who works in the castle is on his side. One way or another, Alamut gets taken by Sabbah. He starts a group that are dedicated to spreading Nazari Ismaili. They're called the Hashashins, which is where we get the term assassin. And they are very specifically committed to doing political violence in the name of their preferred brand of Shia. So they spend a lot of time killing Seljuks, for example. They kill the leader of Jerusalem. They kill like 3 sultans. Like you name it, they will kill you. So this is a guy who really inspires fear in people. And we know that by the 13th century, as far as China, they're writing about the assassins and very specifically about Sabbah and how he set them up as, again, this sort of mastermind figure. El Cid and Sabbah are 2 really interesting guys because they're also really closely linked contemporaneously, and they're in a very similar world. Tactically, they're very different. You know, El Cid is very much more of an open and pitched battle kind of guy, although he uses psychological warfare. But I would argue that the assassins are a group that engages pretty much in psychological warfare as well as targeted killings. So they are not so much going to come to your castle and besiege it, but they will come to your castle and kill you in your sleep. These 2 things are related. I don't want people to think is that the only way you can be an adventurer in the Middle Ages is through engaging in violence. One of my favorites is this guy called Friar Julian. And he is hired by the King of Hungary, Bela II, who is interested in finding out where Hungarians came from. And he claims to have found a group of people in kind of like southwestern Russia who speak Hungarian. And he's like, I've done it, guys. Like, and he's telling them, you know, over in Western Europe, you know, we've got King Bela, you should come check it out sometime, it would be great. But then the Mongol incursions hit. And Batu Khan is on his way west, and he makes it to Hungary, right? And so Friar Julian takes off, and he's moving as fast as he possibly can back to Hungary. And he's like, King Bela, I've done it. I found the Proto-Hungarians, but also, more importantly, we've got, you know, a couple 1,000 men on horseback who are coming this way, and we need to get prepared right now. So he does a really great job in sounding the alarm of what is going to happen. The Hungarians are still standing when Batu Khan decides that he's got to go back because, you know, there's been a lot of deaths and they needed to find a new great Khan, right? So that's great. Unfortunately, we lost those Proto-Hungarians in the meantime. And people go back and have a look for them, but they're never found again. And they probably were one of those casualties of the Mongols, of which there were, of course, many. One of the coolest adventurers, in my opinion, is a guy called Rabban Bar Sauma, who was born in China. But he converts to Christianity, and he, as a result of this profound conversion, decides that he wants to go to Jerusalem, like all good Christians want to do at the time. Unfortunately for him, he only makes it as far as Baghdad. But in Baghdad, everyone is really interested in this Chinese guy who's there, and he eventually meets the Sultan, and they're like, I love all this. This is fantastic. Will you go on a mission for the court into Europe? He gets sent first to Constantinople, and everyone in Constantinople is freaking out. They're like, I absolutely love this. There is A, a Chinese guy, and B, he's Christian. This is fantastic. Everyone's throwing parties for him. They're like, you've got to go further west. You've got to go further west. He gets sent to Rome. They're a little less enthusiastic in Rome. The papacy are like, I think you might be a heretic. I don't really know what this kind of Christianity is. And also, don't you know that the Pope is the head of Christianity? And this guy's like, I'm sorry, I'm from China. Who are you? So So he ends up having to kind of flee under cover of night from Rome, but he ends up at the court of the King of France. And they're like, again, Chinese guy, we love this. He meets the King of England because the French king is like, got a Chinese guy like that. So he makes this incredible tour of Europe, doing diplomatic errands for Baghdad, and then eventually kind of gets back into the kind of Middle East, and he retires in Azerbaijan in a nice monastery, and he's just a really renowned monk after that. So you could just be a religious guy who's super impressive because you're interesting, and you go on crazy adventures. And I think that it's really important that we have a look at these weirder ones, these ones that are not necessarily about violence, but are about exploration or connectivity, because they're equally interesting. These are a group of people who are incredibly unpleasant at times, because the kind of thing that drives you for money or fame or to seek new things can be quite caustic. But on the other hand, I think that there are plenty of people who are just genuinely open and curious. And if you're the sort of person who's willing to go to a new court, make some new friends, pick up some new languages, that moves us forward as well. And we see this all the time in the medieval world with the exchange of ideas back and forth between the Arabic and Christian worlds. And this is something that really drives science and medicine forward. And there's a very fruitful flow back and forth in that. And that doesn't come from a place of conquest or violence, but a seeking of knowledge, which I think is also very much a part of being an adventurer.